Good morning, children. Do your folks have these books? Uncle Arthur's Bedtime Stories? No? Well, they're kind of old. That's why I have them. They're really good books. Uncle Arthur wrote all types of stories, all for children. And I wanted to tell you this story this morning because it goes right along with what I'm going to be talking about later. And this story is about a boy named Wilfred and his sister named Gwen. And it was the beginning of summer. It was about a week or so into summer. School was out, and now they're starting to get bored. What are we going to do? Wilfred was talking to his sister and he says, I need something exciting. I think I'd like to be a pirate. And Gwen says, well, that wouldn't work very well because you'd get thrown in jail pretty quick. Well, that is true, so what should we do? So they thought, and then Wilfred came up with the idea of, let's do a surprise package company. Gwen says, what in the world is that? And he says, well, we will make a list, and we'll find out nice things that we can do for people, and things that we can give to people to make them happy. And so that's what they did. They made their little list, and they started right at home. Mom had been very busy. After lunch that day, she had to go to the store. She'd been gone all afternoon, and she hadn't time to do the dishes. And so Gwen and Wilfred cleaned the whole kitchen up. When Mom came home from town, she was all tired, and she set her groceries on the kitchen table, and she goes, what in the world has happened here? She says, somebody's been here while I've been gone. And the house was quiet. Wilfred and Gwen were out there in the garden, and she called them in for supper, and she says, was Auntie here while I was gone? And they said, no, not that I believe, not that we noticed. But then there was a little note that said this. It says, the surprise package company called this afternoon on a little matter of business. Mom says, I wonder what in the world that means. And Will says, well, I wonder. And Gwen just said, let's eat. So they did. Well, the next day, Gwen and Will were heading down the street to old Mrs. O'Higgins' house. Mrs. O'Higgins was an older lady who was bedfast and pretty well neglected by everybody. So they came up to her house and they knocked on the door very gently. I guess they didn't want to really have her come to the door. And nobody came to the door, so they peeked in the window, and there she was sleeping. She was sleeping in bed. So they carefully opened the door, and they walked in, and right beside her bed was a little table, and they laid a little package there. Then they turned around and left, and as they left, Gwen stumbled and made some noise. And Mrs. O'Higgins says, who is that? Well, Gwen and Will were running away quickly. And anyway, she looked at that package, and inside that package was something simple. It was just 3 little eggs, but it said, we wish you well, with love from the Surprise Package Company. She said, who in the world is that? Well, the next day, one of Will's friends from school, Frank Gorley, he had been sick. A long time ago, people got the mumps. I don't think they get vaccinated for that nowadays, but Frank had the mumps, and the doctor told him he had to stay in bed, and Frank was really, really bored. And he was sitting there in his room. There was a small backyard, and the backyard had a brick wall over, so he really couldn't see anything, and he was just kind of staring out the window, and all of a sudden, here comes this package. Came over the wall, it was tied to a string, and it was gently laid down. Frank says, what in the world? So he called his mom. Mom, go get that package. And his mother went out, got that package, and inside that package was 4 more little packages. And one said, open on Monday. The other one said, open on Wednesday. Another one said, open on Friday. The other one said, open on Sunday. Well, it was Monday, so he got to open it. And inside it was a little bit of a paint set. He says, I think I've seen this before, but he couldn't remember where. And the note said, best wishes from the Surprise Package Company. Well, a couple days later, they went back to Mrs. O'Higgins' house, and they peeked in the window, and she was sleeping. So they opened the door very quietly, and they went in, and this time they had some flowers and some more eggs, and they left it there on her bedside table. They were very, very careful this time. Gwen made sure she didn't stumble over the steps, and they left. But they were so focused upon being quiet, they didn't notice that in the next room there was a man sitting. Well, as soon as they left, this man happened to be the doctor, and he got up and he went and looked at that package, and sure enough it said, with love from the Surprise Package Company. He says, oh, now this makes sense. I know what has happened. He says, I know now what Frank was talking about. And so a few days later, Will and Gwen received a letter. And it was an invitation from the doctor to please come to his place for lunch that day. So they showed up at the doctor's house, and they had a lovely time at lunchtime. And then he had a couple surprises for them. Well, this time they were totally surprised. And they said, how do you know? And he wouldn't tell them. He says, it's a mystery. But what I wanted to tell you was that, Will and Gwen, they were doing nice things for other people, but it made them even happier themselves. And that's how it is in life. When we do things for other people, it makes us happy too. So look for just little things you can do. It wasn't much that they were doing. It was just little things, but little things make a difference. You can go back to your seats.